Okay, so this is my low back pain exercise progression program. What I did was, here's our patient, Mateus Lewis. May I record you for SPSC 388? Can you verbally say yes? Okay, he says yes. So what I did was I printed out images of like what every exercise looks like so that if Mateus understands, but if a patient didn't understand and I wasn't able to do them at that very second, I could show them what it looked like over like with clip art. So the first thing we're going to do is called a prone alternating arm and leg extension, which I just explained to patients that it's a dead bug, but laying on your stomach. So I'm going to have you flip over and lie prone, which is on your stomach face down. And then we're going to have his legs stretched out here. Okay, that works. So he's the cat. So his legs are stretched out. His arms are stretched out in front of him. And I'm going to have you do the opposite arm and leg lift once I say go. So he's going to lift his, for example, left leg and right arm. Yes, opposite, right arm, left leg, and so forth. So what I'm really looking with, and you can go ahead and start with whichever one you would like. Good, and try to really get, so yeah, that's okay. Go ahead and keep going, and then relax, and up, and relax, and rest. So what we're really looking for here, and what I would be looking for, is his bilateral range of motion. So when he goes up, is his left leg able to come up as much as his right leg when he does the opposite switches? And I'm really looking also to see, is he able to keep his neck, and which is hard to see from this angle, but his chest and his shoulders and his neck. Sorry, the cat is eating food. His chest and his neck and his shoulders are off the ground. He's also lifting his knees off the ground. And from what I saw, he had similar range of motion in both legs and both arms. So now for modifications, it's obvious that Mateus was able to do this easily. So if I had a patient who was needed a little bit more struggle, a little bit more push, I would actually get a resistance band, and this is a light resistance band. And I would put this right here along his wrists, and I would have him do the exact same exercise, but now he has a little bit of resistance in his arms when he's doing the opposite arms. If things were too difficult for a patient, which obviously they aren't for him, but this is an option. This is a makeshift pillow. This is the thickest one we had. I would get a pillow or even like a soft platform from the AT room, and I would place it right here underneath their hips. If you'll roll over for me. Go back over, go ahead. And this would be able to help alleviate some of that pressure and would actually give them more stability than they would have if they were trying to balance their own body. You can roll back up for me. So those would be the modifications that I would use if I had an athlete who needed a harder challenge, or even an athlete that needed less of a challenge if they were in a rehab program. The next one we're going to do is wall slides. So I'm going to have you go over. I'm going to have him go to this wall right in the front. To be honest, it might be difficult to see from this angle. So I'm just going to kind of explain what I'm looking for. So have you stand back up against the wall, take a few small steps out with your feet. Yep, and then make sure they're shoulder width apart. You can go even slightly more shoulder width if you need. And then when you're ready, keep your back against the wall. Yep, shoulders against the wall, head against the wall. We're gonna have him slide down until his thighs are parallel to the floor. Hold for a couple seconds and then slide back up. Good, back up. Nice, and can you do one more? Nice, and up. So what I would look for with this, and it would be obvious to tell if this was difficult for a patient, they would not be able to get back up as quickly or without pain, even at that. They also would struggle with bilateral depth. So you can see here, it was obvious his hips went down at the same time, his knees came out at the same time, his knees did not extend over his ankles, he had good positioning, his feet stayed flat on the floor. You'd be able to see that he was having issues if he was, you could see bouncing with him lowering down, like when you do an example if it's hurting, but he would get stuck in, yep, just like that. So he would get stuck and he would bounce a little bit if it was difficult for him to get up and down. Again, if this is too difficult for a patient, and we would probably know that before we put them on a wall slide, I would try a couple different things. I might add a stability ball behind them. And by adding the stability ball, it'll actually, it might trigger the balance a little bit, but I'm more focused on having them be able to get back down and up if I was to add a stability ball. I also would do another thing, I would add a chair behind them so they were able to sit down in a chair at the bottom instead of having to hold the bottom. I would do that if someone was really struggling with this exercise. And then on the opposite side, if they needed more of a challenge, I would try to do this by increasing the time that they are at the bottom of the wall sit so that it acts more as a rep and an exercise instead of just like a stretch. So they would go down, hold for 5 seconds, back up, straight back down. So extending the time they're at the bottom and shortening the time that they are resting at the top. Okay, so I'm gonna have you come back to the mat. We're gonna do some curl ups. So I'm gonna have you sit back, have you lie on your back and keep your legs good, just like they are now at a 90-degree angle. Keep those feet planted on the floor. So you can either have your arms across your chest or resting right behind your ears. You're not going to be pulling on your ears if you place your hands there though. We're going to have you raise up, shoulder blades completely off the floor. Keep your neck. So already, as we can see, rest back down. When Mateus came up, the first thing that came up was his neck. He's pulling on his neck to try to get him up. What we really want them to focus on is keeping a neutral position with their spine and not overextending their neck. Try again. There we go, much better. So you can see he was overextending and trying to compensate for not being able to come up with his core. I'm going to give him an excuse and say it's because he had lifting this morning, so maybe he's sore, but we don't want them to use their direct neck and spine. That's when we have neck issues. You can relax back down. Now he's trying to hold it to show up. Again, we're also, when it's hard to see from this angle, but we try to make sure that our patients are keeping their backs along the floor. So sometimes if you see someone who has a weak or unstable core, they will arch their back. One of the things I tell my patients is I shouldn't be able to stick my whole hand under your back. You should have no arch. It should be stuck to the floor. I tell them to suck their belly button into the floor. That way we can engage our core. This is another one that may be difficult for some patients. I would help by putting a pillow right below their back. That would really help with giving them some core stabilization, help with the balance, and really give them less of an angle that they have to come up. That I would then progress to what we're at now. This would be the next step. And then the final step, which I would give someone if they were really excelling at this exercise and wanted a bit of a more of a stretch, I would add a stability ball that they have to do the exercise on. So they would obviously be sitting, they would place their lower back on the stability ball. This would force them to actually balance at the same time of doing the curl up. This would be super advanced. I probably wouldn't start someone there. I might start with, have you raise your knees for me? Maybe they do a curl up where they're holding their knees up and then they have to come forward. And then I would move on to the stability ball underneath them. Stability balls will really help with balance. And if your core is not stabilized and activated when you're doing an exercise on a stability ball, you will fall right over. So it's very obvious if the patient is ready for a stability ball or not. Okay, fourth one. This is a double knee to chest. This is more of a stretch, in my opinion, but we can make it into an exercise. So we're going to start with what the stretch would look like. So you're in the same position still. We're going to have to start, your arms would just be resting across your chest, but you're going to bring your knees up to your chest. Then you're going to put your hands on top and right underneath that knee at the same time, and pull them to your chest. Yep. And then once you feel a nice stretch and a little bit of pressure, you can release and do the same thing again. So this is very good for a stretch in the low back. We know that this might be too much for a patient if it starts to hurt, but right now, obviously it doesn't hurt because it feels good for him. We're really looking again, hard to see from this angle, but when I'm standing from the side, I can see if he's lifting his back at all. I'm also trying to make sure that his neck's not coming up. If his neck is coming up, it's obvious that he is way too tight. And by pulling on his lower back and his hamstrings, his whole body is trying to move forward, compensate. So we're looking for everything. His spine and up should be neutral, and he's pulling those knees to his chest. Again, this is typically not one that you see. This might hurt too bad, but if it is hurting a patient too bad, I'll do one at a time. So just drop one of your legs. Good. I wouldn't go straight. That would be too much of a. So we're going to modify with just 90 degrees here. They're pulling one, and they're able to relax and pull the other. This is too easy. This is when I would make it more of an exercise. So I'm going to have you put your knees up to what I call tabletop position. So it's just 90 degrees again. Put your knees up. Yep. So what I would have him do is I would have him now keep this one up, and can you slowly straighten or just drop it? Straighten and then back up. Good. And now this one, can you just touch your heel to the floor while keeping this one in line? It doesn't have to be, you can stay bent, your knee bent. So just back up. Yep. So this is what I would call dead bug marches. There's a lot of different names for them, but these are both working on a stable core. And with this one, you can also Same rule, I should be able to fit my whole hand below his back, whose belly button is tucked in, and he is laying flat on the floor. Okay, you can relax. We got 2 more. Heel dig bridging. So this is just basically a glute bridge, but instead of having flat feet on the platform, you're going to be on just your heels. So your toes and your palms of your, not palms of your feet, the bottoms of your feet are going to be raised up. We're going to have you do, this is a hip bridge variation. So just relax your arms by your side. Keep that neck flat and come up on those heels and lift your hips up to the air. Good, and drop back down. And try again. And drop back down. So I know Mateus well. It's obvious that he does have some lower back issues, but he also has very weak hips and he is very not flexible. So we can tell when he's coming up, this hip actually comes up and then he rotates out. So his right hip is coming up, which is his stronger leg, the leg he uses to play soccer with. His right hip comes up first before his left leg can level out. So that obviously there's a couple options there that we can see. It's either a weak glute and he's not able to bring them up, super tight hamstring and he's not able to bring them up, or just overall the left leg needs more strengthening. This is really, really showing you what their hamstring flexibility is like, what their hamstring strength is like. Same thing with the glutes, the glute medius as well. So what we are also looking for again is no hyperextension. So be dramatic and like overextend your hips. So over bring them up. Yeah, this is what we don't want, and drop back down. So if they were like overextending their hips, or they also were very quick and not stable with the movement, if they're stable with the movement and they're moving through it slow, that means they're able to hold it and they're able to balance well. If they're not and they're kind of falling all over the place, they're not able to stay on their heels, they have to drop down and use their toes or the bottoms of their feet, we can tell they're struggling. So again, this is too difficult. I would just have them drop back on the bottoms of their feet, use those feet to stabilize them instead of just the heels, and do a regular glute bridge. If that even was too much, again, place a pillow below their back, make the range of motion a little bit less. If this was too easy, I have 2 options here. What I would do, and it's going to be hard to show, but I would take a flat bench that you would normally do like bench press on, and bring their legs up for me. I would actually have them place their legs on here and do a glute bridge staying on their heels. You can release your legs there. That would be one modification that I would do to make it harder. If that is too easy, I would even try a single leg option. So they can either do single leg lying on the floor like they are, or a single leg with a flat bench. So those are the 2 options for, or one option, well, I guess there's 2 for both. 2 for the modifying it to be more easy and modifying it to be harder. The last one is, again, a stretch in my opinion. This one is going to be a little difficult to show in the room. I don't have the exact tools that I need to be able to show it properly, but I'm going to explain it. And I'll include the pictures of what it would look like if I was doing these type of modifications. So this exercise is called a thoracic extension stretch, which is what we basically refer to in coaches, just call it is rolling out the lower back. So if I have my roller here, which I do not, I would just have my patient, you can have your knees bent or shit, you can bet. I would place the roller right here on their lower back to start. You could start mid-back to start. And essentially what they would just be doing is rolling back and forth, slowly controlling themselves over their back until they feel pressure in one place, rolling back down if they feel a little pressure. Sometimes, if this was easy, obviously we'd include, sometimes we do a little stretch on it. So you could pull your knee up, you could twist to the side. Essentially though, we are just moving the roller up and down their entire back to get that stretch out. This roller that you would need would be the long roller, and you don't want to place it. You don't want to place it up and down because that would be targeting just the spine itself. You want to be targeting the muscles around the spine that are touching into the spine. Therefore, we would want it laying this way on his body rather than this way. I have included some pictures on the paper that I will include when I upload this video. This is also supposed to help open up his chest and breathing. So a lot of the time when you have patients that are experiencing low back pain, we are constantly hunched over, we are walking incorrectly, we are feeling it in our chest when we exercise. This is really just to open everything up. We, again, are hoping that we do not see hyperextension of this arch. Their back should still be in contact with the roller. I don't want them rolling so far completely over and overdoing it that their whole back is arching. Okay. If this was truly difficult for a patient, I'm going to have Mateus show us how we would do this. I would have a patient do it on a chair. So go ahead and sit up for me. So what I would do with this chair, and this isn't our best chair, but a lot of clinics, go ahead and sit with your back up against it. A lot of clinics will have chairs that have a natural arch in the back that are able to stretch. So what I would have my patient do is scoot their butt all the way back to the end of the chair. Luckily for Mateus, his feet he's long enough that he's able to still keep his feet planted. Put your arms over your head and lean back and stretch that back. So this is similar. I normally, if I had a chair that didn't rock, I wouldn't have to hold on to it. But for this case, I'm holding on to it. This is still targeting, and he can scoot down a little bit if he wants to target more of the upper back. Same thing with the lower back. But this exercise is essentially doing what a roller would do, just with more stability and more control over the pain. If you have a patient who's really struggling with back pain and you put them on a roller, once they start rolling, they're not going to be able just to fall off. So this chair is an easier way they can just sit back up if they feel a little bit of pain. What I would do with someone that is experiencing a lack of difficulty with this exercise in this stretch is I would put them on what I call a yoga wheel. So it's just a hollow wheel that obviously you don't know. I would just pick a specific size. I'm going to include a picture of it. But what that can do is allow them even more range of motion and even more of a stretch rather than the foam roller would. They could also do it with an exercise ball, but that ties in a little bit more of core stability. And right now I was just trying to focus on getting them a stretch. So I will include a picture of what the yoga wheel would look like, but I would try to put a yoga wheel in the same way that I put a foam roller and have them just practice on their range of motion with that. So those are my 6 exercises.